What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Raybon of the Action Network, and this is our NFC West Fantasy Preview episode. Here to break down the Niners, Rams, Seahawks, and Cardinals. With me, one of the top fantasy rankers in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, what's going on?
What's happening? What jersey are you rocking today? Is that Garrison Hurst?
Oh man, I remember Garrison Hurst. I think it was opening day 98. I want to say against the Jets. He had like a 96-yard walk-off overtime run. I still remember that like very vividly. But no, this is Jerry Rice 94. Yeah,
GOAT.
Yeah, I love the 94 jersey because they had like the 75th anniversary patch and everyone was kind of rocking their throwbacks. I've been watching some 94 games on YouTube actually.
Nice.
But yeah, for any of you guys listening, guys and gals listening who may not be familiar, we're going to go through every fantasy relevant player for every team in the NFC West. We'll start with the San Francisco 49ers. And it starts with the quarterback situation. Brock Purdy's going at QB 28. Trey Lance is going at QB 30. And then Sam Darnold's also hanging around here. Some reports are even saying he may be overtaking Lance for that number 2 role. Whereas Purdy, he had to wait until March 30th for the surgery on the elbow. So it's a 5 to 7 month recovery timeline. So like 5 months would put him September 1st, but if he's on the long end, it would be closer to November. So that's why I guess Lance is still going in the top 30 as well. But how do you see this quarterback situation playing out for the Niners?
Yeah, I mean, normally it's the running backs in San Francisco is the shit show. We're trying to figure it out. This year it's the quarterback. But, it all depends on Brock Purdy and how soon he can be ready to go because it sounds like he has inside track and he will be the starter when healthy.
Yeah.
So, he was the QB9 in 6 starts last year. I don't know if he has that kind of upside long term, but he does, maximize the potential of McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle. So he's just like perfect for this offense. And we didn't see it last year, but he's actually a sneaky good runner. I don't know if they asked him to not scramble much because they couldn't afford him getting hurt because they had nobody behind him. But he does have more rushing upside than people think. So if he does play week 1, I think QB 29 is just a steal, but we just don't know if he's ready. So that's the joys of drafting in June. But I think out of the 3, I still think I'd be leaning Purdy right now.
Yeah, and to be clear, every report I've heard, even straight from Shanahan's mouth, has said, like, this is our quarterback. This is our guy.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of the health. So, as I said, the optimistic timeline, he would start every game, but it's not, I guess, it's not a given. Any thoughts on Lance versus Darnold here? Because Lance is going to QB 30, and we always love these running guys who have some scrambling ability, but Lance has been a pretty big disappointment thus far. It doesn't, the fact that he's, can't even doesn't even have like a clear hold on the number 2 role with Jimmy G out of town.
Yeah.
That's got to be concerning. I know he fractured the hand in 2021 and it kind of forced him to adjust what was already kind of some wonky throwing mechanics. But I don't think Shanahan's loving what he's seeing out of Lance in practice. At least that's the sense I get. Any thoughts there?
No, this is tricky, and I think QB 26 is overpaying for him. Obviously, Lance has, QB 1 upside with his rushing ability, but I just don't see it happening. On the 49ers, maybe his upside is he gets traded somewhere, but I don't know where he would go where he'd be like the week 1 starter.
Right.
So, I don't even see a path there. So, yeah.
Oakland? Vegas?
Oh, yeah. I was going to say that in our AFC West pod, but yeah. That's probably the only outcome where, okay, I could see where, QB 26 would make sense. But, that would have to happen where Jimmy G gets cut and they trade for Lance. So a lot of things have to happen for him to hit here. Still like the talent and everything. I just don't see as many paths to take him before Purdy, especially right now, seems, I don't want to say egregious, but questionable to say the least.
Yeah, because you're not going to trade him in the division of Arizona. Even though, I do think he would be a good fit, backing up one of these other scramblers, whether it's like a Lamar or I know the Eagles got Mariota, but somebody like that. But Arizona would probably be the ideal spot, just because he could probably start 6 to 8 games there where Kyler's getting healthy and still be kind of a 1-for-1, not a 1-for-1, but a guy who can kind of do, move around just like Kyler can. But I think right now, if the season started today and Purdy wasn't healthy, I think it would be Darnold. So,
which is interesting.
Yeah,
he might be great in this offense.
He was great down the stretch for Carolina.
Yeah,
I mean, he could, he just kind of he is a high pick. He does have some talent, but obviously not a great fantasy asset. But he might be a streamer DFS type of play because he could probably put up similar numbers to Purdy, as good as this offense is.
Yeah, no. Remember, this offense made Nick Mullins look like a good QB2 for stretches. So I would not be shocked if like Darnold starts week 1 and he looks really good in this offense, kind of like Purdy last year. So crazier things have happened for sure.
Yeah, so Lance is the guy who's probably overvalued, even though I hate to say it because I love the upside, but just really hasn't come together, and I don't really see it as of now. Passing game, Debo did not have a great year last year. The ADOT went from 8.5 to 4.5. The yards per route went from 3 to 1.7. The yards per catch went from 18 to 11. That was predictable because, dude, you don't just average 18 yards a catch with an ADOT under 10 anyway. But like his average his average completed air yards was just 2.4 last season. So essentially his average catch was just 2.4 yards beyond the line of scrimmage last year. That's kind of the guy he is, but that makes it like you're really depending on him being this otherworldly yards after catch guy. So do you see him rebounding? I know he says he had a terrible season and he wants to rebound, but do you see it, or do you think Ayuk at wide receiver 30 is the better value than Samuel at wide receiver 16?
Yeah, I'm going with Ayuk as the better value. Debo is still one of the best players in the league, no doubt about it. But after Christian McCaffrey came over and after McCaffrey was a full-time player, in week 8, Debo ranked wide receiver 33 in points per game.
Yeah.
From that point on, it's just when you have another high usage player like McCaffrey in the offense, especially just how much he overlaps with Debo's role to begin with, it's hard to overcome. Debo at the end of the 2021 season when he was getting 5 to 8 rush attempts a game, a couple of those like near the goal line, that was peak Debo. But they just don't need that right now with McCaffrey in the mix. So especially just the targets that Ayuk and Kittle are going to command. There's too many mouths to feed to be taking Debo this high, as exciting and talented as he is. I'd rather wait and get a guy like Ayuk outside the top 30.
Speaking of Kittle, I'm interested into how you are kind of viewing his projection because for 4 straight years prior to last year, so from 2018, which was his second year in the league, to 2021, he averaged no less than 5 catches for 65 yards, and his low end targets per game was 6.7. And last year, he was down to 5.7 targets per game, just 4 catches for 51 yards. So dropped off a catch plus over his last 4 years, 15 yards per game. But he bailed himself out with 11 touchdowns, and he had never really been a touchdown guy. But his targets per route the last 4 years, 31% elite, 28% elite, 24% very good, just 18% last year, which is pretty average. So, he's another, I mean, people aren't really talking about it as much, but I feel like he's another guy that really got hurt with kind of the McCaffrey, McCaffrey signing and the fact that, the last couple of years, Debo's, even though he took a step back last year, Debo's also been more involved in the short to intermediate area. So, Kittle's, yards per route is, 3.1, 2.8, 2.4, 1.7, like all the underlying metrics are down and the touchdowns were the only thing that saved him. So like, do you see him bouncing back, or are you, expecting the touchdown regression to kind of make him a kind of overvalued as a top 4 tight end going in the first 4 rounds?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some, touchdown regression coming, but he's still, arguably one of the top tight ends in the game. I think for him, especially, it comes down to who's starting how many games. Like if Trey Lance starts 8 games this year and Purdy starts 8, I think that's going to hurt George Kittle the most. But he had an up and down season. But where do you think he ranked at tight end in Brock Purdy's 6 starts last year? Bit of a trivia.
I want to say either 1 or 2.
Yeah, tight end 1.
Right.
And Brock Purdy's 6 starts.
I figured no, that's the other side of the coin. That's what I was trying to tee you up for, because it's tough, because it's like he's been declining. He's gonna be 30, but he did play the best with Purdy, but it was a lot of touchdowns. So it's like, it's tough. Would you take him where he's going, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, because he's going tight end 4. I think that's appropriate. I have him and Hawkinson pretty close. Mm-hmm. I think right now I would still lean Hawkinson. I think with Kittle, the downside is we might not get a full season of Brock Purdy. That's the downside. So
yeah,
if Lance has more than 2 games started, that's going to really start to eat into Kittle's production. So that's why I would still go Hawkinson right now. But you could get Kittle 10 slots later. I'm okay with that, but he's probably the guy that's tied to Purdy the most, I think, in terms of, projecting his value this season. I agree. He was probably due for some positive touchdown regression, to be honest. I mean, he's too good not to score double-digit touchdowns, but I don't think we can bank on him scoring double-digit touchdowns again. But I think the targets, the catches, the yards will be there. And with Purdy under center, the consistency, but he is rock solidly my tight end 4 as of now.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass it on more often than not. He still goes late in the 4th, and I just do see some downside because the targets per route is a very sticky metric, and the fact that he's been on the decline for 3 straight years now, and it could make sense because you got Debo, you got McCaffrey, Ayuk is breaking out. So you have premier pass catchers or above average to great pass catchers at 3 other spots in the lineup now. It's not like a few years ago it was like, yeah, Kittle, of course he would be targeted 31% of his routes because San Francisco wasn't really working him much else. So and he's a great blocker, so it's like he can impact the game without necessarily putting up big numbers, and obviously that also keeps him healthy as he enters his 30s. So yeah, I'm out more often than I'm in on Kittle, especially if the Arizona Cardinals get any better against tight ends. He got 4 of his 11 touchdowns in the 2 games against the Cardinals. Yeah. So there are some. I'm concerned. Like I just don't know if he's definitely going to be a top 6 tight end. I just don't know if he's worth, and I know he was like the number great with Purdy, but I just don't know if he's going to be worth like a top 50 pick is what I'm saying. Like tight end might just be Kelsey or Andrews or bust, or even just Kelsey or bust. So, but yeah, I do like Ayuk at wide receiver 3rd. I think he's solid there. Christian McCaffrey is going RB1 in a lot of drafts. Just under 15 carries a game with the Niners. I mean, even him, he saw like a little bit of a downtick, I think, compared to like his heyday with Carolina in terms of the usage. He's just very efficient. Are you taking McCaffrey or Eckler first overall, or first at running back?
I think it's more of a coin flip than people think. Eckler, we didn't talk about him too much on the other pod, but I don't think he had more than 20 carries in a game, but he's getting all the most valuable touches, getting the goal line carries, getting the passing work, similar to McCaffrey. So I would still lean McCaffrey now. I just think it's scary to think McCaffrey's upside in one of the best running back schemes in the NFL, the 49ers, a full season of that. Like, again, I think he will need Brock Purdy under center as well. If it's Trey Lance for like the first 5 games, that's going to really hurt McCaffrey because Lance is going to scramble more, not dump it off as much. But I just love McCaffrey's upside in this offense. I think he's like almost exactly a year younger than Eckler. So right now I'm leaning McCaffrey, but it's very close. Eckler is right there.
Yeah, I actually lean Eckler because, we talked about this on the other pod. I think the Chargers may run the most plays in the league. Their pace, they were already a fast-paced team, and Kellen Moore has been the fastest-paced coordinator And Eckler, what is it, 38 touchdowns over the last 2 years?
Yeah.
And I actually think Eckler has a little bit less tread on the tires, I think, overall. I think he's a year older, but or maybe two. But yeah, I lean Eckler. You can't really go wrong with either of them. But
Yeah.
sometimes Shanahan will just throw like Elijah Mitchell in there at random times instead of like with Eckler, it's like you said, he's just getting all the high value touches, and he's he actually averaged about a catch and a half more than McCaffrey with the Niners last year, about a catch more than McCaffrey overall, but even more at the Niners. So yeah, I lean Eckler, but no qualms about McCaffrey either. What do you think of Mitchell? He's RB42, averaged about 10 carries per game on 35% of the snaps with McCaffrey in the lineup, including the playoffs. Do you think he kind of reprises that role and gets, kind of pushes for double-digit touches when healthy?
Yeah, you kind of allude to it. Kyle Shanahan does whatever he wants. So that Elijah Mitchell would benefit from that. And Mitchell could see enough usage even when McCaffrey is healthy to offer RB3 flex value at times, especially when there's heavy bye weeks. And obviously he has RB2 plus upside if CMC misses any time. So, I think Mitchell is the type of backup running back who should probably be inside the top 40 as a result. And the Niners, while we don't really know what's up with the QB situation, they still have a high win total. What is it, like
11 and a half? Yeah, I think it's 11 and a half. Yeah.
They're going to have plenty of positive game scripts, and that's really where Mitchell would thrive. So I think there could be some spots where you're sneaking Mitchell in your lineup even when McCaffrey's healthy. I think there's enough volume to go around in the running game. So yeah, he has a ton of upside as well. So I do like him in that wide receiver or running back 45 range.
Yeah, love him in redraft where I could just kind of hold him on my bench. Maybe if McCaffrey misses any time, he might even become a good trade chip, or sell to the McCaffrey owner. But best ball does worry me because he's missed 18 of 34 career games with 8 separate injuries. Eight. Yeah, not even in a week, 2 years. But yeah,
he plays through that. He played through like a separated shoulder.
Yep.
Mitchell's a grinder, so even though he's been getting hurt, he plays through it more often than your typical running back.
And he still missed half his games.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of the running back. This offense, you're kind of taking a blind corner. You're trusting the blocks. You could take some pretty big hits. So running backs do take a little bit more of a beating in the scheme in general, just if we want to be honest. So that's kind of how all running backs have been in the scheme. But yeah, something to monitor for sure.
Yeah, I'll probably have Jordan Mason on like a non-zero amount of best ball teams.
Have to.
Yeah, so who do we like? Sleepers on the Niners, anyone?
I would just say Brock Purdy, assuming it seems like as of now, he's on track to start week 1. And, QB 29, that's going to be a steal. So it's kind of just getting ahead of potential good news with Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I like Mitchell. I think in redraft, though, best ball, I don't like to risk the missed games in best ball. I know that you want upside when Mitchell does have it, but still, I think the durability has been such a question mark that I really don't see him playing a full complement. So, but love him in redraft. What about overvalued guys or busts?
Got to go with Trey Lance here. I think QB 26 is a bit too high. He needs a lot of things to go right for him to hit that. And plus, let's not forget, he's coming off some pretty significant lower leg injuries. So who knows if he's going to be 100% by week 1. So I think just based on current ADP, Lance is my bust.
Yeah, Lance, and I think Kittle. I'm a little worried about Kittle. I think the touchdowns regress a little, and I'm not sure if we get back to the 5 catch for 65-yard guy with McCaffrey and Debo and Ayuk here and a great defense. And especially now on the other side of 30. So, or entering his age 30 season, I should say. So yeah, Lance and Kittle for me. Seattle Seahawks next up. Geno Smith up to QB 12 in ADP over the last couple of weeks. He got, of course, that 3-year, $75 million deal at 40 guaranteed, and was the QB 5 overall and 7th in points per game last year. And all they did was go out, add a round 1 wide receiver, a running back in round 2 that could catch the football. I do like Geno's rushing ability, 21 and a half yards per game. So, and he doesn't face a top 10. He doesn't face a defense that ranked in the top 10 in DVOA against the pass until week 12.
Wow.
So I like Geno. I mean, quarterback 12 now. I mean, that's about, you can't really go much higher, but I do like, I am optimistic about Geno. What about you?
Yeah, who would have thought that we'd be talking about Geno Smith as like QB1? Crazy times, but he was one of the biggest surprises of last year, obviously. And another guy who honestly, the time to invest in him was last year. I think, like you alluded to, right now you're kind of taking him at market value right now. It's a fair price. But I do love the fact that they added a third wide receiver in Jackson Smith-Njigba. Yep. The first wide receiver drafted this year, and I would say the best wide receiver prospect. So I think Geno is a high-end QB2 pushing QB1 upside. Like you said, he still has some decent rushing upside at this point in his career. So I don't think he's going to drop off. I think what we saw last year will continue this year. So, yeah, I think he's priced appropriately. He's not a guy I'm going out of my way to get, but certainly you'll want to make some Seahawks stacks because with Metcalf, Lockett, and now Jackson Smith-Njigba there's too much potential in this offense to just completely fade them. So I think it's a fair price for him right now.
Yeah, great best ball team because you could definitely Geno is a QB 12 to 14 is still easily draftable, and you can still get Metcalf and then Lockett a couple rounds later, and then Smith-Njigba a couple rounds after him. Hey, you can even top it off with Noah Fant and hope he balls out against the Cardinals again a couple times.
Yeah,
but no, I mean, just they've been doing great things in Seattle. Like that, a lot of people kind of give kind of stun on Pete Carroll and act like he's like old school, but Seattle's really low key been, especially after we saw what happened to Russ when he left. Like Seattle's been doing a lot of smart things, especially in offense, and to be able to kind of turn it around and get to a point where they could be one of the top offenses in the league, I think is pretty impressive. What do you think about? So how are you treating these receivers? So you got Metcalf at 15, Lockett's at 28, and then Smith-Njigba is at 37.
Yeah, so I think Metcalf clearly, the best one. We pretty much know what we're getting from him at this point. He's still only 25 years old, so he might not have even peaked yet. But the reason why Geno is so good for him is Geno had the fifth highest catchable rate on passes 20 plus yards downfield, first on target passes. So that's great for Metcalf, who's more of a downfield threat. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba could eat into his target share some, but not enough to really overly concern me. He might even help draw some attention away. So I think Metcalf is fairly priced there. I think Lockett, as always, is probably a little bit undervalued at wide receiver.
I remember saying that last year, like everybody's sleeping on Lockett. I think he was going outside the top 30 at one point.
I think because last year we were projecting Drew Lock to start a handful of games, and we didn't know Geno was going to be this good. So, but Lockett, I think he's outperformed ADP every season, it seems like. So
pretty much.
Wide receiver 30 does seem too cheap. So I think he's probably the best value. And while I love Jackson Smith-Njigba as a prospect, I mean, he's going to be the number 3 target at best. So it's hard to get behind him at wide receiver 37. This reminds me of when CeeDee Lamb went to Dallas, to be honest, where, is arguably the top wide receiver going to a team that already had 2 good ones. So I think in the long run, like maybe next year or 2 years, I think Jackson Smith-Njigba will be, a top 20 type receiver. But he's more of like a wide receiver 2 kind of guy anyway. He reminds me of like good Robert Woods on the Rams. Like that's his upside, is that type of receiver. He could also develop like, not as likely, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, like that type of player. That's his ultimate upside, obviously. But with, Metcalf and Lockett still healthy, I don't see how he commands enough targets to be like a consistent wide receiver 3. So he's the guy that might be a little bit overpriced just based on, his hype. But I think Lockett right now is the best value.
Yeah, I think he probably has one or 2 more years of beating his ADP. He's been the wide receiver 16 or better every season since 2018 although he was used a little bit more, underneath last year. His ADOT went from 15 and a half to 2 years ago to 11 and a half last year. And his yards per route went from 2.4 to 1.9. But that said, he still outperformed DK Metcalf in both in PPR and half PPR. So, was a top 15 receiver yet again. So yeah, I agree. I mean, there probably shouldn't be a 13 slot gap or a couple of round gap between Metcalf and Lockett yet. He is 31. So like I said, maybe next year, maybe the year after, because you do have some talent there entering their primes, and Metcalf and Jackson. But I think Lockett probably has one at least this year should still be a decent value, at least hit the ADP. Like I don't see him falling too far outside the top 30 or anything like that. Noah Fant, he averaged 71 yards, 5.5 catches for 71 yards in 2 games against Arizona. Against everyone else, 2.5 catches for 23 yards. So tight end 27. I mean, if Smith and Jigba hurts anyone's value right off the bat, it's probably going to be Fant, because again, he's just not really a factor outside of the Cardinals. So don't really like him. What do you think of? So Kenneth Walker is going RB13 now. Like I said, I think right when you start hitting, like even Josh Jacobs is starting to feel a little frozen pondy. Walker's RB13. He was very strong after contact last year, which is good to see. He was, in the top 75th percentile, and very reliable as well. No fumbles on 255 touches and just one drop on 34 targets. So he didn't make many mistakes. But they do have Charbonnet now out of UCLA, another second rounder. So how are you projecting? How many touches, I guess, are you projecting Walker per game?
Well, I'm still kind of fiddling with my projections, but I love the talent. Hate the ADP right now. I think RB12 is a bit high. We saw the upside last year. Weeks 6 through 10 when he was a full-time starter. After Penny went down, he was the RB1 over that 5-game stretch. So he has massive upside, but bring in a back like Charbonnet, great second-round pick out of UCLA. I think that's going to eat in his workload a bit, specifically the receiving usage. But I think maybe even goal line usage. If you look at Kenneth Walker last year, he had 10 attempts inside the 5 last year, only scored 2 rushing touchdowns. That's a minus 2.1 in expected touchdowns on those rush attempts, 3rd worst last year. That could either mean one of 2 things: that he's due for some positive touchdown regression, or might get replaced as a goal line back. And I think Charbonnet, he's a better fit near the goal line. He's a little bit more of a power back than Walker. Kind of gives me like Nick Chubb vibes. So I think he's probably going to be better equipped to handle goal line carries. Plus, Walker's more of a home run hitter. If you look at next gen stats, they have this measure that kind of measures if a running back's a north or south runner, and Walker's 6th lowest on that metric. So he's, trying to hit home runs, running to the edge, and spent the 2nd most time behind the line of scrimmage. So goal line carries maybe just aren't his thing. So I think that Charbonnet could eat into the goal line work and the receiving work, really lowering, Walker's ceiling. So I think RB12, like you said, this might be where the frozen pond kind of starts. Even though he's an elite talent, there is some sneaky downside there.
Yeah, I was actually we got to get some side action going. I don't know. I don't know exactly how though, because I would bet that Walker does not see the goal line work. I feel like we always have these arguments. Charbonnet? Yeah, no, like I'm betting Walker keeps it. Like I feel like every year we have these debates on, not just you and I, but like, just the whole industry. I know Friedman and I have had some debate, but like every time somebody like says like a rookie's going to come in and steal like goal line carries from like a very good back. Like I remember when it was like, oh, AJ Dillon's going to get goal line carries from Aaron Jones. Like, nah. I think Kenneth Walker's like very, very good. Like I don't think I think the Seahawks are just wisening up, because the run game is a very important part of maximizing Geno Smith. They're trying to put all the pieces around him. They got another receiver for him. They didn't really need to. I mean, you have 2 of the best receivers in the game. You didn't really need to get a 2nd round pick on another running back, but that's what they're kind of doing. I still think Walker's going to be a big part of the offense. And I mean, he still runs very hard, can still break tackles, and still gets a lot after contact. So I bet he keeps goal line work. I think Charbonnet is, ideally for them, they were playing Homer and DJ Dallas a lot on passing downs over the past couple years. I think that's where he kind of starts out. But I still think Walker gets probably like 14, 15, 16 carries a game. But like you said, yeah, not many catches, like probably just maybe one. He would be lucky to get average 2 a game. Had 1.8 last year, but yeah, I do see some downside here, but I do think he'll keep his goal line roll.
Yeah. I'm not saying, like, I always think in terms of percentages. There's a better percentage chance that Charbonnet is going to eat into Walker's goal line work than Chase Brown eat into Joe Mixon's goal line work.
Oh, hell yeah. I love me some Joe Mixon.
So let me just put it that way. Like, I'm not saying Walker's going to lose that, but there are some concerning things there. And Charbonnet is a great prospect.
Yeah,
that's kind of the other side of the coin. And he does profile as a better power back. So I wouldn't be shocked if he eats into that. But I'm not taking you up on like a median bet.
Okay.
But we got to find something.
Yeah.
We got to find something where both running backs have to be healthy. Give me like obviously a spread on touchdown. We just make it specifically inside the 5 carries. We could do something like that. We'll think of something. And then I could find some value there. But yeah, I think Walker, like I said, obviously a ton of upside. But taking him as a low end RB1 right now is a bit much. But there's a lot of guys in that range, honestly.
Yeah, Frozen Pondy. Because I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this much. I'll take Walker over Breece Hall. I'll take Walker over Breece Hall all day.
The funny thing is these backs are really good. If you think back at the Frozen Pond like a few years ago, it was like Mike Davis. Oh man, who was the other guy? But just some like really bad running backs.
Whereas, yeah. Like guys that were like out, like they weren't even starting for their team. By
it was like Mike Davis, guys like that.
Mike Davis.
So the fact that it's like Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, it has nothing to do with talent. It's just kind of the situation surrounding it. But just running backs are a fragile position to begin with. So I would just be careful with them. But
again, but he's good. Like he's very fucking good. Yeah. So like that's why I'm not like out of all those guys, like him, like I like Mixon because I just think he's gonna do what he normally does.
Yeah.
But like I'm not like super worried about Walker. It's just I don't necessarily think he's worth the RB13 pick in terms of his like ADP and like whatever. What is it? The early 3rd round? Is it? Second, early 3rd. That's a little stretch, but like I'm not like worried about him completely like belly upping or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. And I think to be fair, he is one of the backs in that range who actually has injury upside if his backup were to go down.
Word.
Whereas like if Zamir White goes down, it's not like Josh Jacobs becomes a top 3 back. He's priced at his max usage. So Walker has top 5 upside if Charbonnet goes down, and there's not that many guys in this range. That's kind of how Nick Chubb has been over the years. If Kareem Hunt misses time, maybe he's a top 5 back. So Walker does have some injury upside, whereas a lot of backs in this range don't.
I think, I think this could like best case scenario, but this could kind of be like another Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon type thing.
Yeah.
Like where, because like every year it's like, oh man, Aaron Jones, everyone's like worried about him. And then he just still like finishes as like a top 15 running back and balls out. Like I could see like Walker being the Aaron Jones and Charbonnet being the Dillon and still finishing like like mid to low 30s. So I don't mind either of these backs. We know the Seahawks are always gonna have the running game as a major focal point, even with Geno playing well.
Yep.
All right. Who do we like? Sleepers.
Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, I gotta go him too. I initially was gonna say everyone's fairly valued, but yeah, Lockett's the fact that he's going a couple rounds after Metcalf. I think he's gonna beat that ADP again. He's been wide receiver 16 or better since 2018. What about overvalued guys or busts?
Sticking with Kenneth Walker again. Love the talent. Would love to get him like RB16. The market's pretty sharp, but I just think there's some sneaky downside there. Now, if Charbonnet misses time, Walker's potentially a top 5 back. So there's still some upside there. But I just think the Seahawks, I guess Jackson Smith and Jigba too, to an extent. Him and Walker are priced closer to their ceiling in my projections, but still love Walker as a talent.
Yeah. For me, it's Smith and Jigba. I love him as a talent, but I think he might be a year away from like a every week starter, and which is kind of what he's being drafted as. Having 3 guys in the top 36 in this offense still seems like a little bit of a stretch, and Lockett and Metcalf aren't going anywhere. All right, let's go to the Rams. The Rams, you got Stafford coming back. He's at QB 20. You got Mike LaFleur reuniting with McVay. Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator, left, but this is McVay's offense. But I think the interesting thing here is just, this defense lost so many pieces when it's Jalen Ramsey, it's Floyd, and I mean, like half of their defense, right? More than half actually of their defense, of their safeties. So I think this defense could struggle more than it ever has in the McVay era. And so that could make this pass offense sneaky good again. If obviously Stafford has to remain healthy, but it could be a lot closer to 2021 in terms of the numbers than 2022, I think, just because I don't think the defense is going to be very good. But what do you think about Stafford and Kupp as well? He's going to wide receiver 4. What do you think of that connection this year?
Yeah, I think it could be a sneaky time to buy low on both because, Stafford dealt with multiple injuries last year, but none are really expected to have an impact on him in 2023. So he could bounce back with a great season. Like you said, the defense could be very shaky. They could be forced to throw even more this year. So yeah, I like Stafford Kupp stacks right now. I'd much rather have Stafford over like a Derek Carr or even Jordan Love, I would say, in this range, just because I think that he has a ton of upside still. And there's no reason to think that he's all of a sudden become injury prone. He's been a tough player. He's played through a ton of pain in his career. So I like him in this QB 20 range.
Yeah, he's a year removed from averaging 287 passing yards a game and throwing 41 touchdowns. So I don't know if the touchdowns, that's obviously a big number, but I think he could get back to in the 280, 290 range just because the defense will be bad. And Kupp should be healthy again. So, I love Stafford in terms of, as much as you can love a pocket passer. But, do I see a big difference? Like Matthew Stafford, if he's I think he will on a per game basis. I am almost sure that he will outscore Aaron Rodgers on a per game basis.
There's a side bet.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm taking the Rodgers side.
Really?
Bet, so.
Oh yeah. I mean, come on. I don't think Rodgers is throwing for in the mid, anything above 270 anymore.
They have a much better defense too.
Exactly. That's really the key. If I can't even begin to list all the names that the Rams lost, but it is everyone but Aaron Donald essentially is going from this defense. It's not looking great. And then they just were really cap strapped, so they couldn't really replace those guys with anyone. So they were going to rely on a lot of young guys, a lot of special teamers, and I think the defense is going to be the worst that's been. What do you think of the other pass catchers? You got Van Jefferson going wide receiver 73, Puka Nacua at 96, the rookie. And they signed DeMarcus Robinson. I just read a quote today from McVay saying Tutu Atwell will have a role in the pass offense this year. So any and Tyler Higbee is still here. He's tight end 17. I think he might actually be somewhat of value, but any love for any of these other pass catchers beyond Kupp?
I think Van Jefferson definitely sticks out in the what's his current AP, like wide receiver 75.
73, yeah.
73. I think that's a good range to take him because last year was kind of a lost season. He missed the first 6 games. Didn't really become a full-time player. Or wasn't able to be a full-time player until week 11, and that's when Matthew Stafford was shut down. So it was like a lost season for Van Jefferson. But this year, he should be the number 2 receiver, should be a full-time starter, obviously. So he could be the number 2 or number 3 target, depending on Tyler Higbee as a result. So if the Rams are throwing more, Matthew Stafford has the bounce back season. I think Jefferson could hit at wide receiver 77. Or 73. I think he's the safest bet out of Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, Ben Skoranek, DeMarcus Robinson. Sheesh. There's a lot of guys that can step up for the number 3 role, but I think Jefferson has inside track for the number 2 role. So that's why I like him the most out of all of them. Outside of the top 70, I think that's crazy value.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially in best ball, because he is kind of more of the low percentage route runner compared to, Kupp is obviously the high percentage guy. I actually think Higbee has a good shot at beating
Oh
his
yeah.
ADP too. He finished fifth in targets per game for tight ends at 6.9, but in the games with Stafford played, he actually averaged even more. He was around, 7.5, 8. So, this year, Stafford can stay healthy. And with the defense bad, I think Higbee can get a lot of cheap catches. He might average 5 catches a game. It won't be for much yards. It'll probably be in, still 45, 50 yards, but that could still be good enough for like a top 8 tight end finish with decent touchdown looks. So I'm fine with buying Tyler Higbee here. Still not a ton behind him. I know they got Hopkins and Hunter Long, but I think Higbee's a good bet for more targets than almost any other tight end outside of the elite guys.
Yeah, I feel like we're always higher on Tyler Higbee. Just when you look at Higbeast, when you just look at his underlying metrics, they're always really good. It's you could argue he's a low end tight end one heading into this season. So love his ADP. He runs a route around 70-75% of the time most weeks. He had a 24% target per route run rate. Plus, kind of what I was saying, the number 3 receiver slot in this offense just keeps getting worse. The number 2 as well. No more Robert Woods, Odell Beckham type. So Higbee really could be the number 2 target going forward. So love getting Higbee, Dulcich, or Kincaid in that tight end 13 to tight end 21 range. I think those are the 3 guys I'm having the most exposure to. But yeah, just love Higbee's upside in this range.
Yeah, and remember Higbee last year, because the O-line was so decimated, there was a stretch in there when I think you and I were both kind of scratching our heads.
Yeah.
He was like staying in to block a lot more than he had been. But he should be back to just, I think that his best role is just like gobbling up a lot of underneath targets anytime Stafford can't get it to Kupp. And that shouldn't change because Jefferson's a guy that's going to go intermediate to deep. And Atwell has kind of been that as well. And, all these other guys, don't really like, it's kind of Higbee's role. Like they don't really throw to the back a lot. So I like it a lot. Speaking of the back, Cam Akers is up to RB21. So the cat's kind of out of the bag. You think he's back to his pre-injury form? You think that's what it was? It just took him like that extra year and a half to get back? Or do you think it was just like a bunch of easy run defenses that kind of explain the explosion? Over the last 6 weeks, he averaged 85 rushing yards, just over 16 receiving yards. So over 100 scrimmage yards from weeks 13 to 18.
Yeah, no, I think it is definitely health related. He came back the same season. He tore his Achilles, right? And we were kind of bagging on him. He had a low yards per attempt. I was bagging on him. But towards the end of last year, much to my chagrin, he was the lead back. And he had such a bizarre season where they benched him. He got leapfrogged by Darrell Henderson. Then he was on the trade block. Then he came back and they just treat him like a workhorse back. And he was the RB4 over the final 6 games of the season. So I see no reason to believe he won't be the starting back week 1 this year. So, unfortunately, the Rams might be involved in more negative game scripts than usual just due to their shitty defense. And you kind of allude to it. Stafford, the Rams offense doesn't really throw to the backs as much. So that's where Akers' upside is pretty limited, is just he's not going to post that many receiving stats. So RB21 seems a bit high now. I was getting him, right around the RB25 range, but RB21, he's kind of sitting atop a tier of running backs. So that's probably a bit high for me. Plus, just again, with McVay, how he handled the running back room last year was pretty volatile. That could happen again this year. So there's always that underlying risk. So I think I want some shares of Akers, but I'm not going all in at RB21. I think that's a bit high right now.
Yeah, like I think he's fairly priced now. He definitely has some upside. And, the Ram, McVay is a good coach. Maybe they figured out how to make it work. Stafford's back and things are kind of, they're just kind of like that more like that 8, 9, 10 win team that mediocre Jared Goff team before the Super Bowl, instead of like what we think, which is their win totals, I think 6.5, which their defense is bad enough to warrant that. So there's definitely downside because he topped out at 3 targets even during that crazy stretch over the last few weeks of the season. Still never got more than 3 targets. He did see an uptick over the last 4 weeks with, at least 2 targets in each of the last 4 games, which is, for him, something big, but still not quite enough to offset the game script variance to make him a slam dunk or anything like that. Any thoughts on any like the handcuff? I know you mentioned Zach Evans earlier in the offseason. Looks like I don't know what's going on because Kyron's still there. Zach Evans, the rookie 6th rounder, but they also just recently signed Sony Michel, which probably is not a great sign for either of the other 2 guys.
No, yeah, Michel coming in makes it very tricky. I did like Evans. Entering the draft, he fell to the 6th round. He was actually the top running back recruit in the 2020 class, I think, over Bijan Robinson even. So he has a ton of talent, but he just never, for whatever reason, he never became a workhorse back in college. So he has a ton of talent, but just the production hasn't been there. So maybe the Rams didn't like what they saw so far, so they brought in Sony Michel. So, Evans is probably way too high in the RB60 range because it looks like it could be either Michel or Evans. Kyron is still just more of a pass catching back. I don't think he has the upside to be a workhorse back. So it's between Evans and Michel, and Evans is probably too expensive right now. So this is a wait and see thing, but I think it's going to be a battle between those 2 guys.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Evans, you always like to kind of take flyers on rookie backs, but the Michel signing
too
is
expensive there.
Yeah, right. And the writing's on the wall. And then Kyron Williams, struggled as a pass blocker, which that Michel can help in that area. His Williams, his pass blocking grade at PFF was 26. That was 87th of 90 running backs with at least 15 pass blocking snaps. So that could be another reason they got Michel. Kyron Williams may end up just being like a Jake Funk, like a special team.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Xavier Jones. What's
preseason hero coming up.
Right. Oh, there was one more guy. Who was that? There's one more guy the Rams had like that. I think he used to be on the Texans too. It was like, who was
recent?
Yeah, like it was like Jake Funk, and it was Xavier Jones, and there was like one more guy. Whatever. I can't think of him, but yeah, the Rams have those kind of guys.
Is Sony Michel taking the Malcolm Brown role? Is that what's going on?
He might. Yeah. He definitely might. But yeah, I mean, or he could just get cut again. Who knows?
Right.
But either way, yeah, not a great sign for Evans, not a great sign for Williams. Nope. So yeah. All right. To recap, who do we like? Any sleepers, undervalued guys on the Rams?
Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee. Obviously, I think those 2 guys are offering pretty decent value and you get them cheap. But either one of those guys can be the number 2 or number 3 target in what should be a pretty pass heavy offense. So I think both those guys are my sleepers.
Yeah, I like Stafford. I think you hit the nail on the head. He's probably got a lot more upside than some of those other pocket passes in that QB 20 range, and Higbee as well. Not often you can get a tight end that finished top 5 in targets per game is pretty much an afterthought. So like both of those. What about for overvalued guys or busts?
Not many overvalued guys in this offense. I'd say Cam Akers. Just his recent ADP is probably a bit high, but like I said, he was a running back 4 over the final 6 weeks last year, so he could pick up where he left off. But this running back room with Sean McVay, that there could be some volatility there. So he's kind of in the frozen pond. But again, if he picks up where he left off last year, he would be a steal here. But I'll go with Cam Akers.
I mean, for me, I'm going to go Zach Evans and Kyron Williams. I think both of those. I just think if Cam Akers went down, I think there would be a committee. I think they might even sign a free agent, or they may just let Michel go at it again. Remember, they let him carry the ball. What was it, like 20 times a game at one point when the last time he was there. So not really feeling the backups to Akers for the Rams. And finally, let's wrap it up with the Arizona Cardinals. They have the league's lowest win total at 4.5. Kyler Murray, recovering from the ACL injury. So we don't know when, probably sometime around mid-season. And the bye is in week 14, so Kyler probably won't miss the bye, which also kind of sucks in terms of draft value. He's QB 23 right now, but it's kind of, I don't. There's so much uncertainty here, and we don't know how he's like. Is he going to scramble as much or run as much? In his first few games back, who knows? There's also new coaching staff. Jonathan Gannon's the head coach. Drew Petzing is the offensive coordinator. He was with Stefanski in Cleveland in Minnesota and then Cleveland these last few years. But what are your thoughts on this Cardinal offense? No DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, as well.
I mean, it's a disaster. It's really hard to project Murray because he could miss the first 6 games or so. And let's say the Cardinals are 0-6. Are they really going to force Murray into action? And, they could end up with the first pick next year if they do end up with the worst record. And, USC's Caleb Williams will be sitting there. Do they take him? Like, there's a lot of uncertainty here. I am not taking Murray at QB 23 just because of the massive downside. Just not sure when he'll return or if they will force him return. Like you said, even when he does return, is he going to scramble? Remains to be seen. So I'm passing on Murray at his ADP. No clue who's going to start. I mean, Colt McCoy might be the week 1 starter. It might be Clayton Tune.
Yep.
For all we know, they haven't brought anybody in like a Carson Wentz or something like that. I don't know if it makes sense because maybe they are trying to tank this year. So this situation is a mess. I'm just kind of fading all quarterbacks here.
Yeah, and Kyler was, he was struggling even last year before the injury. Probably, I would say, his worst season. So, I'm concerned. I don't think it's worth it stashing him. I'd rather get the upside of having a guy play all the games, and don't really want to stash a quarterback with an extra roster spot. Maybe if you have an IR slot, maybe, but not too interested in him in this offense. He was down to 6.1 yards an attempt last year. I mean, that is not good.
Caleb Williams.
Right. Marquise Brown could be interesting. He's going wide receiver 35. In the 8 games without Hopkins, he averaged 9.5 targets per game, about 6.5 catches per game compared to 4, about just under 4.5 with Hopkins in the lineup, and 69, about 70 yards without Hopkins in the 8 games versus just 40 with Hopkins. So, I mean, this is your number 1 receiver, and you could get, 4 or 5 catches for 60 plus yards a game from Brown. So I like him actually wide receiver 35 because bad team, they're gonna have to throw. The quarterback will suck. So I don't know. The touchdowns probably won't be there, but you should be a good bet for catches and yards. So I think it's probably a little value there.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Just with Hopkins gone, he has a ton of upside. We don't know who the quarterback will be, but just if they're a dumpster fire, they're gonna have to throw a lot more. So the target should be there. He has a ton of upside. Wide receiver 35 is a steal. I have him inside my top 30, even factoring in all these like horrible variables. So I love getting Marquise Brown this late.
What about Rondale Moore? He's going wide receiver 59. He did have 6 or more catches and 49 or more yards in 5 of his 7 healthy games, 5 of 8 games overall. And his average up to target went from 1 to 5 last year. So there's that. But moving on up. Any interest in Rondale, or do you think he's too much of a gadget guy to be trusted?
Yeah, I love Rondale Moore. He's exciting, good real life player, but too much of a gadget player. He does require a ton of volume or to become fantasy relevant. Plus, he might be hurt just with more potential two tight end sets. This could be more of the Browns scheme. They do have 2 great tight ends there, Trey McBride and Zach Ertz. So that could, limit the amount of snaps that Rondale could even see. He's not a guy you're lining up outside. So I just don't like him in this, new offense. And he's the kind of guy that does require a ton of volume. So I'm not interested at wide receiver 59. I think there's like a handful of guys I'd rather have than more in this range.
And then they drafted Michael Wilson out of Stanford. Do you think he can get a starting role this year, or you think that's like a year away?
He could, because again, if this is just a lost season, you might as well see what he's got and get him some run. We kind of know who Zach Pascal is, although he has some ties to Gannon from Philly, so maybe Pascal ends up being the 3 receiver. Greg Dortch is still there, so Wilson's going to have some competition. Plus, this offense probably can't support more than 2 pass catchers anyway. So Wilson's not a guy I'm interested in fantasy, but I wouldn't be shocked if they do let him just get some run out of the gate because it is a lost season. But he was pretty talented, 3rd rounder out of Stanford. He's more of a possession receiver. So again, one of those guys that could be hurt with them running more 2 tight end sets. But I think for me, it's Marquise Brown or bust with these receivers. I'm not really touching anybody else right now.
Yeah, because Brown could be a target hog. I mean, again, the quarterback is, but and Pascal, you mentioned it. He does have ties to Gannon, and he's going to complicate things for Rondale Moore, Greg Dortch, all these guys, because he got a 2-year, $4.5 million deal with a $1.5 million guaranteed. Greg Dortch has 0 guaranteed and got signed for the minimum. So Pascal is clearly ahead of Dortch, Dortch is kind of redundant with Moore a little bit, more of a special teamer. Dortch wouldn't draft him. Wilson's probably a year away. We mentioned the 2 tight ends. McBride's going 22, Ertz 30. Ertz had surgery in late November on the ACL. But I wasn't too impressed with McBride either. I mean, just targeted on just 12% of his routes and averaged under a yard per route, just 0.8 yards per route run. So I don't know what to do with either of these guys. Really, they're probably just going to cancel each other out. But I'm not. Do you like McBride if let's say Ertz misses the first 6 weeks at all, or no?
Yeah, no, I think if Ertz misses the first 6 weeks, I would be much more interested in McBride at low 20s. And McBride, I think he was the top tight end prospect in last year's draft. And we kind of have to. He was pretty bad last year, not gonna lie, but we kind of have to forgive rookie tight ends. It is the hardest position for players to transition to the NFL. And he did flash towards the end of the season. He had that 7-catch, 78-yard touchdown game against Falcons late in the season. So there was at least some silver lining. And I thought of him as like a Dallas Goedert coming out of college. So I'm not writing him off. So I think that, the tight end 22 range makes sense. I'd much rather have a Sam Laporta right now because he doesn't really have competition. I mean, when Ertz comes back, McBride's going to be splitting snaps. But I think McBride could break out, but the market's already into that at tight end 22 range. So that's the problem. The market's too sharp on this one. But if Ertz is officially on the PUP list, or he's going to miss, 6 or more games, then I'd be much more interested in McBride here.
Ertz. I mean, we'll see if he can get back for week 1. If so, he'd be the better value of those two. What about in the backfield? As of now, still no other free agent signings. So it's James Conner and it's Keontae Ingram. Conner's down to RB 29. So it feels like, I know the game script's probably not going to be there. And, just looking at the potential tank and the potential to maybe sign somebody, but Conner seems like a value at 29. Even with all those things being said.
Yeah, he's pretty cheap for a potential workhorse, right? And he's 28, so maybe he has one more solid season, but wouldn't be surprised if he starts to decline pretty quick here. But the Cardinals should be trailing a lot, so Conner is more than capable to rack up catches. Could see a ton of catch. He's game script proof, really. So I still like him, and Drew Petzing's coming over from the Browns. I could see this being Nick Chubb type role for Conner, with Ingram being the Kareem Hunt role. So I actually do like Kareem Hunt way down in RB 80 range, because I don't know
Ingram or Hunt.
Keontae Ingram.
Ingram. Okay,
yeah. Sorry, I'm comparing him to Kareem Hunt right now.
They could sign him. I mean, that would.
I don't know why they would. Again, I think they're content just fully tanking here. So I think that just Keontae Ingram, he reminded me of Kareem Hunt at USC. He could kind of play that role even when Conner's healthy, siphon some receiving usage away. So I like Keontae Ingram outside of the top 80 right now. I think he's one of the better handcuffs in the league right now because he could see some snaps even when Connor's healthy. So I think both running backs, ironically as it is that this team's going to be a dumpster fire, I think both running backs are actually worth investing in because both can, contribute in the passing game.
Absolutely. Yeah. We love them. Love Connor and Marquise Brown as well. Those are my two guys. What about you?
Marquise Brown, James Conner, and Keontae Ingram. I think those are the three players I'm investing the most from the Cards.
Overvalue guys or bust?
Rondale Moore, just way too high, just based on this shit show and the new system. I don't think it's going to be a good fit for him. I think he's being overdrafted.
For me, Kyler, I'm not interested in at that price. I don't want to stash him. I don't want to, he wasn't good last year. He lost his top receiver. There's even a slight chance he might not play all year if they're really bad. Trey McBride, I don't think he should be going tight end 20. I just don't think he showed enough, especially with Ertz. Ertz is going to come back at some point, so, exactly. And it's not like, this is not a team that you expect a lot of passing touchdowns from anyway, especially early when Ertz could be out. So I don't really see a path for McBride hitting that, top 24 tight end ADP and Greg Dortch as well. He's still going inside the top 100. Like again, Pascal is getting guaranteed money and Dortch is not. So Dortch could, be back just on special teams. This is a whole new regime. And they drafted a receiver. They got no guaranteed money for Dortch. So, and they signed Pascal. So yeah, I'm out on him as well. I don't think he should be getting drafted at all. All right.
Over under 4.5 wins real quick.
4.5 wins. I'm going to go under.
Yeah, same.
You never like to do it with those, but no. I can't believe the market already caught on to the Texans too. I saw they're up to 6.5. I was like,
oh shoot.
I should have got them, but I hate investing way too early.
Same.
Totals. It's just you know what I mean? But I would have loved to get the Texans at 5.5. But yeah, that is going to do it for our NFC West fantasy preview here on the Fantasy Flex. We have now dropped all 8 of our fantasy divisional preview episodes. So be sure to check those out. If you missed any of them, and keep it locked. We'll be back next week. You can find Sean on Twitter at @the_oddsmaker, me at Chris Raybon, and we're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this money.